Hello my fellow wizards, today we're discussing the second batch of secret bosses that can be found throughout the spiral. If you haven't already checked out part 1, I recommend doing so, but if you like to live on the wild side and jump in halfway through, all the more power to you, I guess. In part 1, we discussed secret bosses in the first arc from Wizard City to Dragonspire, so today we're moving on to secret bosses located generally in the second arc, including Grizzleheim, Celestia, and Avalon, so strap in nerds. Just to give a quick disclaimer, I am classifying secret bosses as bosses that do not appear in quest lines and are hidden off the beaten path. Skeleton key bosses do not count here and are not being discussed in this video. Everyone on the same page? Good. First, let's start with the whopping 10 secret bosses hidden throughout Grizzleheim. Yeah, I'm not making that number up. Our first honorary secret boss is Grendel Madlanes, located in the Hall of Valor dungeon. He can be found near the end of the dungeon in a chamber on the far right side of the main hall where the final boss, Jotun, spawns. Grendel Madlanes is an interesting boss in that he wasn't always known by the name Grendel Madlanes. Originally he was called Lokar, but was later renamed by the developers for an unknown reason. I'm not sure what's going on, but clearly he's compensating for something.
That is so fetch.
Gretchen, stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen.
If you're interested in fighting him, he drops several no-auction pieces of gear along with the zombie pet. Up next is the second secret boss in the Hall of Valor, the Rune Devastator. This colossus can be found wandering close to the entrance of the dungeon in a chamber to the left. It's unclear why he's in this dungeon since unlike all the other bosses and minions in the area, he's not a Grendel variant. His name is actually incorrectly spelled in-game as Devastator rather than Devastator, which his monstrology description playfully alludes to, reading, "It's so devastating, even its own name couldn't survive unscathed." Whether the original misspelling was on purpose or a spelling error the developers later wanted to jokingly acknowledge isn't clear, but if you defeat him, he drops pieces of no-auction gear along with the Silver Colossus pet. Next, let's look at some secret bosses in the two sister dungeons to the Hall of Valor, the Helgrind Warren and Winterdeep Warren. Normally, if you head straight first into the Hall of Valor to face Jotun without first completing these two side dungeons, Jotun's two brothers will join him in battle, turning an otherwise normal boss fight into a fairly difficult challenge with 3 bosses total. However, if you first complete the 2 side dungeons first, you can take out Jotun's brothers prematurely, which removes them from Jotun's final fight, allowing you to defeat him with much less difficulty. Though Jotun's brothers, Ulik and Greidir, can appear in Jotun's final fight, I think they can also sort of count as secret bosses, since they're not directly mentioned in any quests, and you can optionally fight them in their own separate dungeons before ever reaching Jotun. Ulik is the optional final boss in Helgrind Warren and drops some no-auction gear, the handy couch potato plant, a great source for both empowers and mega snacks, along with the red cat pet. Greidir, the final boss in Winterdeep Warren, on the other hand, also drops some no-auction gear and couch potatoes, along with the life bat pet. Besides Jotun's optional brothers, there's actually still more secret bosses to be found, specifically in Winterdeep Warren. On top of Greidir, you can also discover Dragar and Holder, 2 Grendel bosses patrolling different sections of the maze. Dragar can be found patrolling the far left side of the map and drops both standard and no-auction gear. As for Holder, there are actually 2 identical but separate copies of him roaming around in both the middle and far right sections of the map. It's not obvious why there's 2 versions of him, but maybe it was some kind of shortcut on the developer's end. Kind of makes you wonder how awkward it is when they bump into each other. Either way, both versions of Holder drop both standard and no-auction gear if you fight them. Now that we're finally done with the 3 dungeons, let's move on to a boss tucked away in the glacial wastes of Ravenscar, Nightwing. Wait, hold up, wrong guy. There we go, Nightwing. This hidden boss is located on the eastern side of the map and is clearly a nod to the fabled superhero of the same name. It's unclear why he's chilling in the freezing wastes, but if you decide to pluck this bird brain, he may drop standard gear, couch potato seeds, or the ice bird pet. Let's move on to a slightly warmer climate and take a look at Nissa, a spider boss hiding in the middle of the large tree at the center of Webwood in Saverstead Pass. Since she has no sigil to activate, be careful while approaching her as you can easily be pulled into a fight with the regular mob spiders surrounding her instead.
Why are you the way that you are? Honestly, every time I try to do something fun or exciting, you make it not that way. I hate so much about the things that you choose to be.
Nissa isn't a very formidable secret boss with only 800 health, but if you're interested in taking her on, she drops standard gear and the brown spider pet. Next, we're off to the Vigrid Roughlands, where our next secret boss is hiding in the depths of a cave. The The hidden boss, Fleshrender, can be found in the aptly named Fleshrender's Cave, located in the southwest corner of the map. While he hides behind an activated sigil, there is no quest associated with him, so while traveling through this area, you've likely run right past him. Perhaps he was originally intended to be part of some side quests or school-related quests, but was later forgotten about. Thankfully, after all the effort to find him, Fleshrender drops some interesting stuff, including no auction gear, couch potatoes, and the mustard troll pet if you seek him out. Our last secret boss of Grizzleheim can be found in Merkholm Keep. Much like the previous boss Fleshrender, this boss is also found in a cave with a sigil, but is not part of any quest line. Boulder Bone can be found in, you'll never guess the answer, Boulder Bone Cave. I have to give the developers credit for their creativity here. Interestingly, while I didn't discover a monstrology entry for Fleshrender, Boulder Bone does have a description which reads, "He's just a great big pile of boulders and bones and bad attitude." This doesn't really reveal anything about his purpose, but does tell me the developers didn't completely forget about him, poor guy. If you're interested, he drops some no auction gear, but not much else. Talk about a bad attitude. Phew. Okay, we're finally done with Grizzleheim, but I still have more secret bosses for you. Let's talk about a group of 5 secret bosses, all of which can be found in one place, this time in the world of Celestia. As you progress through the world, you'll eventually find yourself in Stormriven, where you'll meet Vendril Starfinder, an NPC with several quests for you to complete related to the summoning pylons nearby. Once you complete his quest, the pylons will unlock, allowing you to access these next 5 secret bosses if you so choose. By activating each of the 5 different pylons, you can choose to summon a different boss, each with a different school. From left to right, you can summon Marcio, Naralor Nightborn, Yogash, Procyon, and Thunderfin. Be aware that each different boss has different sheets they may use, so you will likely want to look them up in the wiki before fighting them, but I'll briefly show you the general list here. While certainly interesting and challenging to fight, most of these bosses drop pretty standard gear, with a notable exception being Yogash, who can drop the spiny fish pet. Finally is the fascinating case of the mysterious well bosses, this time in the world of Avalon. As you progress through the story, you'll eventually reach the outer yard. On the eastern side of the map is the mysterious well, which remains dormant until you reach the storyline quest, Throw Down the Gauntlet, at which point the sigils light up and you can access the dungeon, though it is not referenced in any quest. The trick with the well, should you enter, is that you may find yourself facing one of 2 different bosses at random, which can change each time you enter, either Flavor Flav or Ridenour Delish. These names are clearly references to American rappers Flavor Flav and Chuck D, also known as Carlton Douglas Ridenour. There is no way to determine which boss you'll get each time you enter the well, and each have their own unique minions and cheats, which I'll highlight here. Both can drop some fairly interesting no-auction gear, and there's evidence that Ridenour Delish also drops evil magma peas, which are great for their mega snack drops. Alright my fellow wizards, I hope you enjoyed part 2 of my secret boss series. Surprise, surprise, but there are still more secret bosses to talk about in the next video. Which of these secret bosses are your favorites, and were there any you didn't know about before? If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing, and as always, I hope to see you out there in the spiral, and happy questing.